I'm just a boy from Kansas out to save the world from chronic disease. And I truly mean that. Nobody is in control of your health but you. I can't heal you. Your doctor can't heal you. You have to heal you. And it's all about having the education and empowerment to know what you need to be changing within yourself, within your life, to set your soul free and accomplish that best life that we all like to talk about. And I truly believe that the greatest medicine of all is to teach people how not to need it. I'm Brendan Vermeyer, the original Holistic Savage. Welcome to the Holistic Savage podcast. Cool. Okay, so now we're live. Welcome to another episode of the Holistic Savage podcast. As always, I'm your host, the original Holistic Savage, Brendan Vermeyer. Super excited to have my good friend, Dr. Emily Poccia, with me today. Emily, what is up? How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm great. Just sitting here in sunny San Diego and excited to chat with you.
Yeah, San Diego doesn't suck. You know, and it's always funny, like the intro, because it's like, we're talking 5 seconds ago and it's like, okay, well, now we're recording, so now we're official, but super chill. No, I am really excited to have you on the show today. So obviously the Holistic Savage podcast, I always like to say, you know, we really are focused on, I've got this birthday balloon ADD moment, but you know,
Is it your birthday?
It was my birthday the other day. And
oh my gosh, happy belated.
So everybody's like, Brendan, what are you doing for your birthday? And I was like, well, I have a plane to catch in a couple hours, so I'll probably do that. I was in Boston for a seminar.
Nice.
And then I got home, walk into my apartment, and there were balloons everywhere because my team and assistants and stuff had busted in my place.
That's
and
nice.
Yeah, so anyways, but if I move this birthday balloon out of the way,
that's what that says above you.
Yeah, exactly. The show is all about, the greatest medicine involves to teach people how not to need it, which is the whole point of this show. And so the pillars of the Holistic Savage podcast: functional medicine, functional fitness, functional spirituality, and functional psychology, and everything kind of in between. So allow me to formally introduce Dr. Emily, and then we'll be informal the rest of the time. But Dr. Emily Poccia is a naturopathic doctor and owner of Wildcraft Medicine in La Jolla, California. Not a bad place to be. There's seals. There's seals on that beach out there.
They wave to me.
Yeah, I bet you're tight with them. But she provides natural healing and health optimization to women and their families through education and empowerment, because she believes that healing the world starts with healing the individual. She is passionate about helping men and women optimize their health before pregnancy in order to have healthy babies and create a healthier society. At Wildcraft Medicine, Dr. Poccia offers a family medicine practice with a primary focus in preconception and fertility, digestive health, and balancing hormones for optimal functioning and wellness. So that bio, I had to literally force myself to get through because I wanted to stop and comment about all of it. But I think that's amazing. And knowing you personally, I know that you have a lot of value to bring to the show. So I could ramble on and on, but I'm super excited to hang out with you today. So where should we even begin though? Well, first, actually, I always like to tell kind of the backstory of like how I know my guests for the most part. But so you and I, we both do some clinical education for biobotanical research. Yeah.
Love it.
And we had never met. Well, I don't think we met in Santa Cruz in January. It was Phoenix was when we first met, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and we just it was like instant vibe tribe though. It was you, me, and Dr. Miller hanging out, which I'll have to drag him on the show one of these days.
Definitely.
Then we'll have to have like a 3-way powwow, because I don't even remember what all we talked about in Arizona that night, but I just remember we talked for like 3 hours straight at the wine mixer after party thingy.
Yeah.
So preconception, pregnancy, healthy babies. Why that? I mean,
no, it's a great
why? What's your why?
I have always just loved kids. I grew up with a younger sister, and all my cousins are younger, so I just grew up around kids all the time, and I was knitting and babysitting, and I knew that my biggest, most important job I'll ever have in life is being a mom. which I'm not yet. I'm a dog mom,
For a child.
but I just really like I feel the joy when I'm around kids, and I just love watching people start their families and going through that whole transition. So part of it was just wanting to be with work with kids, and how do we support kids to be as healthy as possible. A lot of it is education to the mothers, because let's
Hmm.
face it, a lot of them are doing a lot of the raising. The
Hmm.
dads help out too, for sure, but a lot of that learning comes from what your mom's teaching you. So a lot of it was working with the moms. And I was also thinking, like, how can I most dramatically impact society on like a big
Hmm.
scale? And for me, that answer was preconception. So our
Hmm.
health starts before we're even conceived. We need healthy building blocks, sperm, eggs, in order to make a healthy baby.
Hmm.
And so, in order to really change society and where we're going, I mean, unfortunately, our society, it's a lot of just treat chronic illness instead of trying to prevent, which is a
Hmm.
lot of what we talk about in functional medicine. So I really wanted to figure out how I can implement and try to impact society in the biggest way. So if we can get men and women as healthy as possible before they conceive, we can help create really healthy babies, not just when they're born, but ongoing. So, if you planning pregnancy and planning preconception health and all that can also help prevent and reduce the risk of things like autoimmune disease later on in life,
Hmm.
allergies, and all sorts of other kind of chronic lifestyle things like diabetes, cancers, and so forth. We want to set them up with good genes and physical, but also spiritual, energetic too.
Oh, absolutely. And the as we were saying before we started recording, I that's something that really fires me up. I can't say that I really like work with a lot of couples or moms with. I mean, maybe that's something I want to do more eventually, but ultimately, like that's kind of part of the podcast. Is like here's the thing with functional medicine and all of this integrated functional stuff is. It applies to every single human on this planet. Like, there's nobody on this planet that wouldn't benefit from combining a functional integrative with whatever else they're doing, through the conventional healthcare model. Um, but that's the beautiful thing is there's no shortage of people that need help. There's millions upon millions, and everybody that knows me knows I'm kind of a walking soapbox. So I'll, keep that tangent roped in here. But that's what I love is, there's practitioners like you out there hands on helping people optimize their fertility to have those healthy babies because has it ever been worse? We've all heard the statistic of 200-300 chemicals measured in the placenta of a newborn. And it's just like, oh damn, we're kind of screwed from birth. I mean, that sounds a little cynical, but right.
Yeah, we can make a big difference from just supporting pre-pregnancy. And a lot of people come in to see you. The reason why I use kind of preconception slash fertility, because unfortunately we still live in the society where you typically go to the doctor when there's an issue.
Hmm.
So I do work with women on fertility issues, infertility issues, etc., and men. But my passion is just preconception health, which anyone can come to, whether you have an easy time getting pregnant or not. It's still important to make sure that you are, detoxing your body and
Hmm.
giving your body all the nutrients it needs to be as healthy as possible. So my passion is preconception, but I also, use the word fertility and infertility to kind of bring people in. So
Totally. And that's totally something that here's the thing is I think there's such a huge I think kind of a knowledge and education gap. And so, the majority of clients, patients, just people, consumers, customers, people off the street, people that need help, society,
mhm.
they don't know what they need. And obviously we are in the information age. We've never had so much information available to us 24/7 all the time. And it's the paralysis by analysis syndrome. And like, I just had a lady comment on my Instagram post the other day from a while back about like MTHFR. And of course, talk about don't get me started on that subject, but talk about something that yes, it matters, but kind of has become a fad. And then people go chasing that rabbit hole and they totally neglect it. It's like, that's only one pathway out of infinite pathways that have a major influence on your health. And
Yeah.
so, her point of what she was getting at is like, well, I had, I think, like 3 miscarriages, and I'm so glad that I found out I have MTHFR, but things aren't better, and I'm totally lost with the you know what I'm saying here? And I'm just like, oh,
Yes, 100%. You
we
make
missed
such
the mark.
like, I think, with Dr. Google out there, which
Yes,
honestly can be very helpful.
sure.
It's great to have information, but you need professionals and like anything, like in any other field, to help you assimilate that information and figure out how it all fits together and look at it in
Hmm.
a big picture.
Hmm.
I mean, I just actually had a phone call recently from a doctor, an MD, and she had heard about an event I was having, which was awesome. And I love working with MDs. But we got on this tangent of, she kept asking me about, okay, well, oh, you work with people that have PCOS. Like, what do you do for it? What do you give
Hmm.
them? And I said, well, it's always such a hard thing to answer, right? Because we're all about individualizing. Everyone's
Right.
physiology is different. You can have 3 people that have PCOS, which I'm sure we can dive in and talk about in a minute, and treat them differently.
Hmm.
So I was going through some of the common things I use, and then she brought up actually MTHFR, and I was like, well, yes, that's one of the things that we deal with. We do check for it. There are other pathways, other genetic SNPs or
Hmm.
mutations that we want to address. And sometimes you could have that mutation, but it's not being expressed. And
Right.
I just could hear over the phone, like her mind was being blown. She was like, oh
Yeah.
my God,
Yeah.
just asking me questions. I was like, why don't we just sit down and have a lunch and we'll kind of go through stuff? Because I mean, knowledge is power. It's what I love
Yeah.
about, what you have behind you there is,
Hmm.
our job is to empower people, help them bring in all the information and figure out what's a specific plan for you and your body to strengthen you, and allow you to kind of go off into the world and handle your stuff on your own. Like, obviously,
Right.
if you need help and support, we'll guide you, but the goal really is to empower people to take responsibility in their health, and to help heal them.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And, before we probably dive into a lot of more specific stuff, that's really it. When I'm doing a consultation with a new client, I like to explain to them, like, look, and I even say this on the trailer promo for my own podcast of, like, I can't heal you. Your doctor can't heal you. Like, you have to heal you. And of course, our whole society has literally been trained for however many years now of, when something's wrong, what pill do you take? And so now there's, obviously, it's like, oh, well, now instead of reaching for the pharmaceutical, let's reach for the supplements. Like, but that's not how it works, though. It's so much more sophisticated. And
Yep. Yep.
and as you said, it's like, let's start from the top. And that's why, no, I really don't think people should try to navigate this stuff on their own. And there's just too much, there's thousands of articles about leaky gut and, this and that, and just about any topic. And they're all just small pieces of a very big metabolic puzzle. And that's
Right.
where you got to have an experienced clinician to help navigate this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love, I mean, I learn a lot from my patients, I'll be honest. Like,
Totally.
they bring a lot to the table. They've sat there and they have researched highly on that one topic that they're
Yeah.
dealing with. Sometimes more than I'm able to, since I'm looking at so many things at once.
Yeah.
But that being said, it's still always good to get that second opinion and to have
Hmm.
people kind of help you out. But being empowered is great. Like, I love patients that
Hmm.
come in and they're educated and they're ready to go,
Hmm.
and they're just looking for some clinical advice of how to put all the pieces together.
Exactly. We have to, I like to tell them that it's like I'm their spirit animal and their spirit guide as we take this healing journey together, and no
Absolutely.
two people are the same. But
Yeah.
so, preconception, fertility health, I would be inclined to, say I think fertility is such a good indicator of overall metabolic health. I feel like as soon
It's
as things start going haywire, fertility gone.
it's almost like this buzzword that I'm using to kind of bring people in, just to like
Yeah,
help them with health in general. Because it's
sure.
true, like, your body, you won't become pregnant if you have a chronic illness most of the time, right?
Right.
Because your body has a mechanism saying, whoa, I'm not healthy enough to carry a child and have to
Hmm.
split nutrients between this, myself and this other little being that's being created.
Yeah,
So the body has an innate ability to heal. It also has an innate ability to know when it's the right time. So
right.
fertility is just another fancy word of saying, let's just get your health as optimal as possible. Your gut
Totally.
health, your hormones, your, your diet, your exercise, your stress levels. I mean, we
Hmm.
really treat everything. That's why we just call it a family medicine practice, because we're
Yeah.
seeing it. And when you get all those things in line and balance, that's when the fertility is, you know, easier. The pregnancies are easier. You're feeling better overall, etc.
Hmm.
So it's just, you're right. It makes sense just to support all the metabolic pathways, and that will
Hmm.
help enhance fertility naturally.
Exactly. And that's kind of the big thing is the functional integrative approach in general is not condition specific. We're not chasing a diagnosis. We're not chasing a symptom. We're really just trying to assess, which it blows my mind. This is, how I got into the whole functional thing is it just blows my mind because when I think about what medicine should be or what it has been historically since the old days, it's like, isn't the point of medicine to like assess the body with the best technology we have and go, oh well, here's all of the factors that are hurting it.
Right.
Well, the body can heal itself if we can identify and remove the things
Mhm.
preventing it from healing. So I don't know, just the model of healthcare today, just how did we get here sort of thing.
Mhm.
But that's the thing. It's like, well, at the end of the day, we're trying to assess your physiology and biochemistry and identify those healing opportunities of, so that way, regardless of whether your goal is to have a child or run a marathon or,
Right.
lose 50 pounds or whatever it is, it all just happens easier, faster. And it all starts with the
Yeah.
environment and lifestyle.
Exactly. The foundation of all three of those examples are still going to be the same, right? And
Right.
obviously, you'll start to individualize. The person who's getting pregnant needs a prenatal. The person running a marathon needs some extra protein and
Right.
recovery amino acids. So, I mean, you start to individualize there, but really, foundation of health
Hmm.
is, we always say, like, when there's a really complicated case and you're not sure where to start, just go back to the foundation and the basics.
Hmm.
Are they eating clean food? Are they getting clean water? Are they sleeping? How's their stress levels? All those things are so critical. It's like having the foundation of a house. You need that
Hmm.
foundation before you go up.
Totally.
So absolutely, I totally agree with that.
Totally. Well, and also too, I'm huge on sort of this yin yang philosophy. I was just posting about it, but I really think our health is kind of this sum or combo of our psychology and physiology, and I
Really.
don't think the two can be separated. And we try to all the
Mhm.
time, but I mean, speaking for myself, you never see somebody chronically ill get better without working on the psychology, the outlook, even kind of the spirituality. Like, what's your purpose? Why are you here? What gets you out of bed, kind of thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Our mind, our thoughts are so powerful. And they can either be a really big obstacle to healing, or they can, excel it in leaps and bounds.
Hmm. Absolutely. So we've
Yeah.
kind of, we've laid the foundation and, sort of set the framework. So with fertility, though, and having a baby, not that I consider myself like a baby producing expert or anything like that. But I always kind of feel like if somebody's thinking about having a baby, especially in today's modern world, we all know chronic disease is at just, it's the worst it's ever been, and our environment is more toxic than ever. We'll probably talk about some environmental stuff, but I always feel like if somebody's goal is to get pregnant and have a healthy pregnancy and produce a healthy baby, I feel like they need to start working on their metabolic health like at least a year before trying. How do you
Yeah.
feel about that?
That's a great question. And so when patients come to see us for fertility in particular and preconception, we basically start them off as if they're they're a new patient, but we do a new
Mm,
patient screening. The first step is like, let's just figure out and support any pre-existing health issues you have,
mhm,
because duh, we're not going to get far if you have hypothyroidism.
mhm,
Um, and then that being said, it kind of goes into this whole fertility cleanse and then kind of pregnancy preparation. So ideally, at least 4 months is what I say. It takes about 4 months for sperm and ovaries to fully develop.
mm,
And so if you want to produce the healthiest sperm and eggs, let's start from day one, giving them all the precursors they need. However, in a toxic environment and world that we live in,
mhm,
I'd say 6 months to a year is probably even better, especially if you're trying to detox from things like heavy metals,
Mm-hmm.
working on removing, even just like in your household, like the different household cleaning products that you use, the makeup that women use, deodorants, etc. I mean, we talk all about cleaning their house, meaning like getting rid of the toxic products that they're using just as much as cleaning their bodies and detoxing. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, we have this buildup of heavy metals and plastics and parabens and so forth that our body's holding on to. So it does help to give it time to
Mm-hmm.
release. So yeah, a year would be absolutely amazing and ideal. I would say it's not super realistic. So
Yeah.
at least 4 months is what I shoot for.
Yeah, absolutely. I always throw that. It's almost like I think about what I feel sorry for my future wife. If that ever happens, I feel sorry for her because she will be on a regimen, to say the least. But if you think about cellular turnover, we replace every cell in our body however often. It's like the intestinal epithelial tissue. We all hear the fun, oh, every 7 days you have like a new intestinal lining, assuming that you're able to build it. And however long it takes for the liver. But the point being, our cells are constantly turning over. And
Mhm.
so I literally kind of think about it as, we want to have the most healthy cells possible going into pregnancy. And I don't know, the simplicity of the number one, with 1 year of, let's
Mhm.
completely change your cellular makeup over the
Yep.
next year. And I think the toxicant, we've got to just go straight into that, because I think that's such a huge and scary one.
Yeah. It is.
Um, Environmental toxicants. So, I mean, that's the thing, is when you have somebody come to you, they're like, hey, Emily, I need your help. I want to get pregnant and have a healthy baby. And so it's like, okay, well, let's get started.
Mhm.
But yeah, don't you think doing some kind of detox, like way in, because you don't want to be dumping toxins while you're dumping
Oh,
toxins into breast milk or through the,
100%. So
you
that's
know
a
what I mean?
really good point. Yeah. You, you I'm going to say you can't, that you really shouldn't detox at all when you're pregnant, right? Because you're
Right.
going to just release those toxins from your fat. Where are they going to go? Right to the placenta.
Yeah.
So yeah, the key is to detox before you get pregnant, which is why preconception health is so important. Um, and sometimes I think you're going this direction, and you can redirect me if you want. But I'll run like a typical metabolic panel with them,
Hmm.
looking. And I guess typical is not really the right word, because in the functional
Sure.
medicine world, we run so many more labs than you would from just seeing a traditional medical doctor. But
Hmm.
we're looking at for infection, we're looking at liver and kidney function, all that normal stuff. We're looking at iron and iron stores and how it's being transported in the blood. We're looking at all the hormones. We're looking at all the thyroid hormones. That's about 9 to 10 different markers. We're looking at, a lot of times I will run the AMH, which is looking at ovarian reserve, how many
Mm.
eggs you have that are viable. And it's a generalized way to look at it. Probably the best kind of gold standard is to get an ultrasound and look at your
Mm.
ovaries and see how many eggs you have. But for women, especially in their 30s, and they're not sure about how much time they have, or they're nervous
Right.
about that, it's a great thing to run, because it can like just let them relax a little bit about having to rush.
Sure.
Yeah, so we'll do that. For men, we're probably doing a sperm analysis. So there's a lot of different things that we're looking at right off the bat. Oftentimes we'll add in heavy metal testing to either
Mm.
through urine or through blood, because that
Hmm.
is very key to be looking at, making sure the detox pathways are working optimally. Heavy metals tend to block detox pathways. They are hormone disruptors. So if there's
Hmm.
hormonal issues, you want to make sure that that's not an obstacle to cure, figuring
Hmm.
out where the root issue is. There's also these toxic chemical panels that you can run as well that are helpful through like Genova.
Hmm.
Sometimes we'll do that too.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's so many kind of ways to skin that cat. I'm curious. So, do you have a lot of people that come to you that maybe have experienced miscarriage, or they're just having a hard time getting pregnant? And then kind of the part two of that question, if you had to rattle off, like, let's say the top 5 most common causes or contributing factors, shall we say, to infertility, what might those be?
Okay. Yes, I love these questions.
Yes.
I do have women that come that either have a hard time getting pregnant or are dealing with recurring miscarriages.
Yeah.
It's so tough. It's
Mm-hmm.
draining. They've often seen many other doctors. They've done IVF. They've done other more invasive therapies. One of the things that I think is really great is that even if you're doing IVF, you can still come see a naturopath. Like they
Mm-hmm.
can help support your body and your metabolism and everything else to help increase the chances of getting pregnant, even while you're doing something like that. Because if your weight's off, too high or too low, if your thyroid isn't functioning as well as it should, if your stress is off the charts, then the IVF isn't going to be as successful.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be still a really helpful thing to have that person, that doctor, whoever you're working with, to kind of help optimize everything while you're doing those treatments. And I'd say the top 5 is a lot, but let's see. Definitely, I'm going to just start with stress. Stress
Mm-hmm.
is huge.
Mm-hmm.
When we release cortisol, which is our stress hormone, it affects so many other pathways, our glucose levels, our blood sugar levels. It can affect our weight. It can affect our adrenals and our immune system, sleep. I mean, so many things. So stress is really important. And the reason why I bring up stress first is because when you're trying to have a baby, it's stressful. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be this totally new transition and change. Maybe there's one partner that wants it more than the other.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe someone's a little bit afraid about it, or nervous or apprehensive. Maybe you've been trying for a long time and you just can't get pregnant. So you're starting to feel stress of that, especially for women. Unfortunately, we have this biological clock that just we hear ticking nonstop in our
Yeah.
head. And that's stressful. So, and maybe I know some of my friends too, like there's a lot of women now that we have been driven towards careers a little bit more. And so we're pushing off the getting married and finding our partner. And that's scary too. Like, oh, what if I don't find someone, but I really want kids?
Yeah.
So I think stress is really huge. We definitely work on stress, both, on a biochemistry level with supporting adrenals, but also with like, how do we just like support your lifestyle and give you tools to help manage your stress? That's huge.
Mm-hmm.
PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome, is probably one of the most common reasons for infertility.
Mm-hmm.
This is where you have lots of little cysts over the ovaries. It's also a metabolic issue too. So you'll often have like insulin resistance type issues, typically higher androgens, which are hormones like testosterone,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes DHEA, sex hormone binding globulin. Those can be elevated. Prolactin may be elevated. So these are just some hormones that will throw off the ability of the female reproductive tract to release and ovulate at the right time. So that's a really big one. So that's working not only on hormones, but also on blood sugar, weight
Mm-hmm.
loss, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a really big one. Hypothyroidism. So under functioning thyroid, again, when your thyroid is not functioning at the optimal level, everything slows down. Metabolism slows down. So you may have hair falling out, dry skin, weight gain, fatigue. I'm missing some constipation, but also ovulation can slow down. So you may not be ovulating at the right time or ovulating at all. And the timing of ovulation is really key because you need to be able to fertilize that egg and then get that egg to the uterus to implant before another period happens. So that kind of brings me to the next common issue is luteal phase deficiency. So for women, they have 2 different phases in their menstrual cycle. Follicular phase, where we're building up the follicles to release an egg, and then we ovulate. And then there's the luteal phase afterwards, which is typically more progesterone heavy. And that's the period of time where you typically fertilize the egg and it gets transported to the uterus. And if the egg's not fertilized, then we have a drop in progesterone. If it gets fertilized and the progesterone stays elevated. So that can be an issue if that phase, that second half of the cycle is too short. Even if the egg is fertilized, it may not get to the uterus in time before you start to shed that lining. So that's really common. And then low progesterone would be another big one too, because you need enough progesterone to maintain a healthy pregnancy. Low progesterone can cause miscarriages. So yeah, I did it. Wow, 5.
I know that wasn't too bad. And I was going to say, because in my head, every time I think of You just the more you do all this stuff, and the more people you start kind of like you hear fibromyalgia and you think oxalates, or you hear IBS and you think SIBO. You just start kind of making those connections. So every time I think like, infertility or miscarriage or whatever, I'm immediate like, yeah, stress, low progesterone, hypothyroid from the hormone. And yeah, the MTHFR thing and methylation, there's definitely just, I mean, with any kind of methylation disturbance, you can't build your DNA and RNA bases, which I guess that's kind of important for building a new human inside of you. But pretty awesome list. And I love that you started with stress, though. And I love how you kind of define stress, because I always like to teach some of my practitioner students of, stress is kind of the sum of your psycho-emotional stress combined with your biochemical physiological stress, and then your structural. So we have to be thinking about, how much wear and tear your body is taking, how much wear and tear your soul is taking, and how much kind of wear and tear your physiology and biochemistry. And so when we kind of look at stress through that lens and realize, like, basically stress is like the cause of all disease, and then it's identifying what kind of stress. And stress as in, oh well, you've got mercury vapor from your amalgams poisoning you slowly, and whatever, or this genetic thing, or oh well, just you're not on the same energetic frequency as your partner as you're trying to reproduce. So there's so many kind of stresses and traumas. And that's, again, kind of tying it back to the kind of functional spirituality psychology of, we have to make sure to address the whole person. And that's exactly what you're doing through your model, it sounds like.
Yeah. When we have men and women come for their fertility consults, they go home with a packet
Hmm.
that it starts off with, you know, talking about stress and different tools, like whether that's meditation or prayer or, walks with the dog in the morning, exercise. It has a whole another section about exercise and movement, because that's really key too. But the
Hmm.
stress piece is so key, not just now while you're trying, but the stress is just only going to increase as you get pregnant and then have a baby. Your
Right.
life's so let's get stress as much. I mean, stress is never going to go away, right? We're
Hmm.
always going to have stress in our life. It's just, how do we deal with it on a healthy level?
Hmm.
What tools do we use to kind of manage and just keep our life as clean as possible?
Hmm. Absolutely. So with the, hmm, the World Health Organization is starting to announce things regarding the environmental toxin. I think, trying to think of how I want to spin this, because with a lot of the common physiological stressors, bugs and parasites and mold and Lyme and whatever, a lot of this stuff we've evolved with over hundreds of thousands of years. And so, although all of that stuff very real, very detrimental, very challenging at times, there's something about the environmental toxicity that I just feel like it is perhaps the greatest threat to our health currently as a mass collective society. You look at the statistics, and just thousands upon thousands of these synthetic chemicals being dumped into the environment by the billions of tons and everything. It's just disturbing and scary and crazy, whether we're talking about the glyphosate or parabens or phthalates or whatever. But when you have the World Health Organization starting to go, yeah, guys, I think we need to look at this a little closer, because there seems to be a very strong amount of evidence correlating the environmental toxicants with, cancer and and all sorts of bad stuff. But I'd love to hear your thoughts about the toxins and the chemicals and how this might play into fertility and having these healthy babies that we all want.
Yeah, talk about stress, right?
Yeah, totally.
It's definitely a big topic that we talk about with our patients.
Hmm.
The key is to make it where it's informative and empowering without being
Hmm.
overwhelming and so stressful that you're like, well, I don't even feel like I can breathe air anymore. Like, I remember
Right.
environmental medicine, and we all were sitting around each other looking at each other like, what do we eat? Like,
Like, we're screwed.
air, what do we use to clean? What do we do?
Yeah.
Like, do I just walk around in a bubble all day? Like,
Right.
I mean, unfortunately, we're going to be exposed to toxins. unless you live maybe in a remote island with like totally fresh air and spring water, which sounds
Hmm.
amazing.
Yeah, it
Uh,
does sound amazing.
so I think it's just a matter of like getting as much information as you can, making the best choices that you can, and kind of living with that balance. So,
Hmm.
um, and I think this is answering your question. If not, you can redirect me. But we talk a lot about the dirty dozen, right? And the
Hmm.
clean 15. So just to kind of get people started, because if you just unload all this information about that, like on them, they're
Hmm.
going to be so overwhelmed. They're going to be like freaked out, and they're probably not going to come back to you.
Right.
So
Honestly,
we want to
though.
start somewhere where we can meet them where they're at. So
Yeah.
Dirty Dozen Clean 15 is a great resource from the environmentalworkinggroup.org. They also have an app.
Hmm.
It tells you the top 12 dirtiest produce, vegetables, and fruits that are highly sprayed and kind of tend to absorb the chemicals. And you should always get those organic.
Hmm.
And then there's the clean 15 that typically have some sort of shell or covering over the inside of the flesh where you're eating, that you can get away with not necessarily having to buy organic. In a
Hmm.
perfect world, buying everything organic would be the best, but that's pricey. It
Hmm.
adds up for sure. So we'll start with stuff like that. Like let's just work on the clean 15, dirty dozen. The other aspect is that toxins are stored in fat. So anything that you're eating that's fat based, milk, well, I hope you're not eating too much milk, but that's a different conversation. So milk, butter, even eggs, you want to get those organic for sure.
Hmm.
Protein sources. So if you're eating animal protein, making sure you're getting the grass fed, the wild caught, the organic, etc. Because those animals, if they're fed things that are loaded with hormones or eating crops that have chemicals and pesticides, we're going to get that from eating the meat.
Hmm.
So we start with things like that. We start with things like how do we look at your home and try to clean it as best as possible. So instead of
Hmm.
using the ammonia and the Windex and all those other things, let's make your own cleaning products. Water and white vinegar. Let's add some essential oils to it. Use that to clean. All sorts of things that will help. Anytime you take something out of your life, whether it's food or a chemical that you're using to clean, you want to replace it with something else. That way they don't feel
Totally.
like, oh, now what do I do? So we try to give our patients tools of how we can kind of replace things that are better options.
Hmm.
And the same thing with makeup. Like, unfortunately, makeup and deodorant and lotions are just loaded with different fragrances and chemicals, unfortunately. And our skin it is the biggest organ of elimination, but also it absorbs so well through the
Hmm.
pores.
Hmm.
And so we talk about, okay, well, instead of using this lotion that has, a really nice lemon lime scent, let's use some jojoba oil, and you can add a little essential oil if you want. Things that are just more natural and not going to block some of those detox pathways that we're trying to work on.
Right. Yeah. I
So, yeah,
love. Oh, go
chemicals.
ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say the chemicals are real; they're definitely there, but it's just a matter of like, how do we kind of live in a toxic world?
Right. I love how you brought that, back down to earth because again, there's tons of information and it can get really scary. And it is that balancing act of like awareness without getting paranoid or, uh, gaining knowledge for empowerment rather than just freaking yourself out. Because the reality is like, hey, the big bodies, uh, I have zero control over how many toxins we're dumping into the environment. So, the best we can do is educate, kind of spread the word. It's going to take time,
Yeah.
So until then, it's like, yeah, we do. We have to learn to adapt. And at the end of the day, there's something to be said for the fact that Darwinism and evolution is still continuing, and the human body is highly adaptable. And so from kind of a big picture standpoint, these stimuli that we're getting, although yes, toxic and poisonous to the body, it's still a stimuli that, assuming we don't just kill ourselves off, maybe someday we'll have better detox pathways because we evolved to develop that. And I think this is something kind of a random side note, but relevant. I look at the time that we live now. I think it's so unique for human existence because if you kind of we're living right here right now 21st century, and this is all we know because this is the only time frame that we've existed in this form. Hashtag we could get into a spiritual tangent there. But the human species has been around 200,000 years, evolved from bipedal hominids out of Africa, blah 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 blah. But if you think about okay, think about the way they used to live with like pyramids and stuff, and then thinking about 1820s. 1820s, I picture the the Brits are coming, and they're wearing like red coats, and they stand in line with rifles, and
You really
what?
were just in Boston, weren't you?
Right, totally, yeah. Actually, I was, yeah. Come to think of it, and I think about the technology jump from pyramids to 1820s lined up with these single shot muskets and what's electricity. Okay. 1820s to 1920s. Okay, well, 1920s, that's like Depression era. But we still didn't have the food processing, the chemicals, we have the Ford automobile. So my point being, look at 1920 to, it's 2019, but 1920 to 2020. Look how drastically different human existence on Earth is. And so when you look at some of these reports of like the, the World Planet Report or Living whatever report, like we've killed off 50% of biodiversity on planet Earth in the past 40 years. And it's kind of like, how could we possibly do that? But when you kind of think about when did chemical manufacturing really kick up? 1960s. And so I think we're kind of facing a very new problem that we have just blown out of the water because there has been this enormous change in what we're doing and what we're pouring into our food and the environment. I think we're just now starting to see the repercussions of that, and we're starting to just now. So my hope is that it's a short-lived problem and we very quickly go, oh crap, we went really south here. But in the meantime, we have to figure out how to adapt. And the unfortunate thing, humans, yeah, we can live inside. We can use water filters. We can use air filters. We can choose to put different stuff that we slather on. The real shame is the animals and everything in the environment. Why are we killing off animals so fast? Well, it's either they have to evolve within their lifetime of like, I'm drinking out of this toxic creek. They can't filter their water. It's up to their organs, and their organs can't evolve fast enough. We changed the environment too quick. Yeah. So they're all just dying.
Yeah, such a good point. I know, it's so sad. And that's where yes, we have to live in a toxic environment, which sucks, but how do we adapt to it? But on the other side of that is okay, well, how do we educate and empower ourselves enough and then demand for something better, right? Yeah. I mean, it's got to come from us, otherwise it's not going to change. Mm-hmm. Not that it's drastically better, but there are a lot of countries in Europe, you hear a lot about how they demand certain things on their food for being labeled, and certain things aren't allowed there that are allowed here. And it's how is the USA, that has all these advancements and such a nation and all these opportunities, how are we not keeping up with those simple, to me, it sounds like simple standards? Mm-hmm. So a lot of it is going to be, I think, people starting to rally. And I think people are starting to get a little bit more bothered and kind of speak out about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's where we're going.
I'm not a big politic guy. I kind of tune out from a lot of stuff and just, focus on what I can impact, I guess. But yeah, from what I have seen, the USA is way behind when it comes to different healthcare standards or environmental safety standards, or it really is. There are other countries that have their shit together way more than we do when it comes to some of these topics, unfortunately. But as you said, I think there absolutely is an increased demand, and exactly why we're here today is kind of spreading the word. And that's how movements start, education and recognizing hey, we have a problem here, and because we all want to have that beautiful little family and healthy, happy babies. But when you've got all the toxicity and toxic babies born into a toxic world and then pumped full of, a ton of vaccines right out of the womb that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, I do.
Yeah, unfortunately. Well, shoot. So with your practice, though, I love that you give your clients very tangible, useful, meet them where they're at. How can we really empower you? But certainly, I know we both know it can be hard to get clients to, patients to use such information. So do you adopt like kind of a health coaching model in your practice to help facilitate?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think just in naturopathic medicine, we learn to do that anyway. I mean, at
Mm,
least that's kind of how I felt going through school is, yes, you're the doctor, but you're also a coach. I
hmm
think that's great.
Totally.
Um, so yeah, I mean, I try to, especially the second visit, how are you doing with all the information I gave you? Let's check in. Like, what are you taking? What are you not taking? Why are you
hmm
taking it? And not in a judgmental way, but like, was it just
Sure.
too much? Was it financially too much? Do you feel like you're just taking a bunch of supplements and it's too hard to get them all in?
hmm
Are you able to fit in your meditation, etc.? So yeah, a lot of coaching is happening because it's not just about giving a protocol and walking away. It's about
Right.
supporting people
Right.
through the process. And especially in the beginning, sometimes there's some extra hand holding that is needed, and that's
hmm
that's what we're here for.
hmm
So yeah, I think the health coaching aspect is really key, and that's where like this may be a little off tangent, but they talk about, with the virtual reality, like, oh, doctors aren't going to be needed anymore. And
Mm,
we can just more accurately diagnose things and tell you exactly what medication you're going to need. I don't think that's ever going to replace human communication,
mhm.
touch, support. You need that. That's sometimes the most significant aspect of the healing process is me looking a patient in the face and saying, I'm here for you. Like,
Yeah.
I believe in you. I know that we can get you better. Yes, it may take a few trial and error, educated guessing of like trial and error of like what works best for you and figuring that out, but we are going to get you better. And
Mhm.
I just like see that relief come, to the patients, and they kind of like surrender that the body has this innate ability to heal. And if they just kind of are persistent and have the right mindset, that they can get there. But I think it comes from the coaching aspect
Mhm.
that really drives and motivates people to continue the protocols and to keep up with their lifestyle changes that they're making.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I think I like that you pointed that out because I mean I say this all the time, all the time. But the word doctor is a Latin word that means to teach, and I think that's so crucial because as this thing up here says, but our healthcare model is not an education based model.
Right.
And so I look at, yeah, kind of the naturopathic functional integrative, just all the stuff is like, yeah, this is kind of what we're supposed to be doing. Like, how did we get away from it?
Right.
Because you're right. I think there has to be, as you said, it's not as simple as like give protocol, walk away. And that's where I've kind of cracked down pretty hard in my practice with, I really kind of force clients like health coaching is not an option.
Right.
We really have this model of like, okay, our initial investigation, interpretation session, give you, the protocol. But then immediately like, okay, here's your health coach and you're going to be doing these bi-weekly health coaching sessions. Cause if that's all it is, here's your protocol, good luck. Let me know if you have any issues. Let's follow up in 2 months. You're
Yeah.
sitting there 2 months later, like, okay, what happened? And well, I don't really notice anything. Okay,
Right.
what are you doing? Like, we have to now talk about what you've been doing for the past 2 months
Or what you're not.
mentally. Yeah, exactly. All the above. So, it does. And I think this line of work requires an enormous amount of empathetic energy. And you're certainly, how do you manage that though? How do you manage and protect your energy? Because,
Yeah.
it's like you have to be very giving with your energy to help these people. But at the same time, you can't drain yourself?
Right. And I'm going to answer that. The one thing I want to add
Yeah,
to what
go
you're
for it.
saying is, sometimes it's not necessarily something that they're doing or not doing. Sometimes it is
Hmm.
just like the protocol that we gave isn't the right fit for them. So I just want to make
Totally.
sure that like it could be so many different reasons. So I try to
Yeah.
really take my ego out as much as I can when I'm
Yes.
addressing patients, and when they come back and they say, oh, I really don't feel different.
Hmm.
or I feel worse.
Hmm.
Okay, that's new information. That's actually allowing us to kind of like rule certain things out and then move
Hmm.
forward in a different direction. So I try to always word it like, I know this seems frustrating to you, but this is actually good information.
Right.
I think always just spinning things is really important. But you're right, it is draining. It, and it's totally worth it because I love helping
Yeah.
people. But what I always say, and I had to learn this kind of the hard way, I basically imagine kind of like a screen because I still want to be connected. I still want to show empathy and sympathy and all those things and really be here for the patients. But if you take too much of it on,
Hmm.
it's hard to go, first of all, just shift gears and go to the next patient right after, and you end up bringing some of it home. And so
Hmm.
with that screen kind of mentality, I can still communicate and let energy flow back and forth, but it kind of catches anything that's just too heavy or
Hmm.
something that I should make sure that I release. And that's kind of how I do it. Sometimes it's just like imagining it. Sometimes it's just kind of like learning to put up that barrier.
Hmm.
Meditation helps me a lot. If I can meditate either in between patients or at least in the beginning of the day to kind of clear my mind. Sometimes I'll do it at night. I actually work with a Reiki practitioner who I absolutely love. I have her see some of my patients. I have her see me.
Hmm.
And she's taught me about like imagining these balloons kind of strapped to you of all the things you're holding on to and just literally cut them away and kind of
Ooh, I like
break
that.
them off. Yeah, it's really actually very helpful.
Yeah.
And like anything else, you kind of fake it till you make it. So some maybe thinking like, oh, like that doesn't seem like it would actually help. Like, so what?
Yeah.
But the more you practice it, like anything else, it gets easier.
Right.
And you kind of learn. I think it's also boundaries too, like letting your
Hmm.
patients know, hey, if you have questions for me and it's more than 5, 6 questions, that's going to be a follow up. That's going to at least
Hmm.
a minute follow up or something versus trying to answer every single question they have through email and it takes you half an hour to do that. Well, now you're drained for the next appointment.
Right.
So sometimes it's a little bit of training back and forth of like, okay, this is how I'll answer you in this time frame. And if it's not in that time frame, it doesn't work out, then let's actually have a sit down consult.
Hmm.
And that helps too.
I really like how you because a lot of this kind of centers back to what we started with, almost like the initial client-patient agreement of they need to take responsibility for their health, is the biggest thing. But you're exactly right, where it's literally we are on a journey together. It's them, it's us. We're walking down this path, and I think patients, clients, people love to think it's all very straightforward. Yeah, because I think the concept of functional medicine is extremely attractive. It's very easy to get people to kind of buy into the notion of, yeah, just run a couple lab tests. We know everything that's wrong with you. We give you a protocol. You take a few supplements, change your diet a little bit, and everything fix, fix, fix. And it's like, it's not ever that simple. The lab information, it points us in a direction, but then we still have to walk that path. And then, we might run into a rock, or then, the trail comes to a jutting cliff with alligators in a river down there. So like we have to navigate that. And so a lot of it comes down to that open communication, and the client really understanding like, hey, it's your responsibility. You have to communicate because we have to be able to, okay, this didn't work. Well, now we got to figure out why it didn't work and we need to modify and course correct and get back
Right.
on track, But you also mentioned, I love to sometimes as the professionals, uh, we're kind of faced with these new things that then we have to figure out, like how do we protect our energy and whatever. And so you mentioned like Reiki and some of that. I just had a really cool conversation about Reiki with Christy Marsh, and that was our first episode of the Holistic Savage podcast. Is like energy as medicine. So I'd love to. And you mentioned you send your clients some of that. So I'd love to hear how you incorporate different like energetic medicine modalities such as Reiki, and what benefit you see from that since your
Yeah.
experience with some of that.
I'm happy you asked because it's not a topic I normally bring up on my own, which I
Sure.
probably just that's in my own head. But one of the modalities that I actually offer, therapies that I offer, is a gemstone energy medicine
Ooh.
acupressure therapy.
Okay. Here we go.
And I kind of describe it that way because it's the best way to like actually visualize it. So
Yeah.
in school, we learned. I went to school in Arizona, and in naturopathic, you can practice acupuncture as a naturopath in Arizona. So
Mm.
I learned acupuncture, which was amazing because acupuncture really helps support physical things going on, but also the mental, emotional, spiritual, energetic. So
Hmm.
that's why I just love that modality. In California, we need an additional LAC license in order to use the needles. So something else I learned in school that was actually like on the weekends, all the great stuff that you learn is always like the extra stuff, right? That you sign
Yeah.
up for. Uh,
Totally.
the gemstone energy medicine therapy, and it's basically using different crystals and gemstones on the different acupuncture points, and it's just this really incredible therapy. It just sounds so like funny coming out of my mouth that I use gemstones like on the body, but I use it because it works. I mean, it's
Hmm.
the results are just totally amazing. And same idea with as with acupuncture, each stone has different minerals that it's made up of, and those minerals give off different wavelengths. So this is where I like because it's science, very science based too. And those wavelengths are energy, right? That's what energy
Hmm.
is: frequencies, wavelengths. And so each stone has different properties and different ways it can affect and interact with our own energy. And so we're combining the aspects of the properties of the stones with the different acupuncture points, and it just creates this amazing therapy for physical issues, pain, stagnation in the body. It can be because of like mental stress or issues with clarity, headaches,
Hmm.
but also the mental emotional aspect of like fatigue, you know, I'm blanking now, but people who are going through grief
Hmm.
or just really stressed. So it just really works on all the different subtle bodies that we have. So this is one of the therapies that I actually offer to young couples that are wanting to get pregnant because of all that stress that's kind of built up in the body and can create some issues with flowing energy.
Hmm.
Basically, you lay down on a bed and like acupuncture, you get those different stones and the different points, and then we apply pressure. So it's really
Hmm.
relaxing. You're in a parasympathetic resting state, which in itself is very healing. And then you have the added bonus of the stones helping support energy. So
Hmm.
I've seen that be such an amazing therapy for people. And then I'll do my own little Reiki cranial sacral support while they're sitting there. And then, like I said, I do have some partners that I work with that do Reiki and have a Reiki practice. So oftentimes I'll refer patients there. And it just helps to just enhance the treatment protocol.
Hmm.
Most of the time, whatever we're already doing starts to work even better and faster because
Right.
they're being calm and they're getting that stress down. It's really incredible.
Hmm. I'm really glad we took this turn a little bit, a little hashtag functional spirituality here, because I mean, this is something I'm really passionate about. And, I'm definitely a hard science guy, but I'm also a very spiritual individual. It's been just a monumental part of my development as a human.
Yeah.
And, the more you accept it and the more you open yourself to the more in different frequencies of energy that you've never put your soul antenna out to, pick up a little bit. Because the more that I kind of get into it, I really feel very strongly that there are absolutely enormous amounts of universal energy that we're all connected with all the time. And, I was talking to Deborah Wayne. She'll be on our podcast sometime soon about, this biofield or, there's Reiki. However you want to label is one thing, but ultimately we're all very energetic beings. And uh, we come out of the womb and immediately are programmed to think that we have to interpret all of reality and everything that means through five limited human senses, sight, touch, sound, et cetera, et cetera. Um, and so we're immediately kind of like closed off from anything beyond those five senses. And yet we all kind of know that gut instinct feeling or something feels off. And so I think it's just kind of funny because, like, if you look at, as you said, energy, what is energy? It's frequency and wavelength of electromagnetic radiation. And if you look at the magnetic radiation scale, infrared, UV, visible light in the middle, gamma rays, X rays, everything in between. We know that, such as microwaves, we know that these frequencies have an impact on elements and cells and atoms. We know this through science, but then a lot of people are very closed off to other forces that might act upon us. So the point being, why do we think we're so smart that we just have the human body totally mapped out and we just need to produce, tons of pharmaceuticals to isolate these mechanisms reductionistically? But then we abandon healing principles and modalities that have been around as long as the human species has been around. And so I think, as you're saying, whether it's stones and Reiki and all these energetic more modalities. But that's what I love about the functional medicine industry is there's a home for all of it.
Right.
There's a home for all of it. We accept it. And it's kind of one of those, we understand. I find a lot of people like you and I, we are very hard science and evidence based, but speaking for myself, the more I learn about the hard science, the more it really just points back to nature and also revealing like, oh my gosh, there is way more that we don't know and understand than what we do know. So why don't we be a little bit more in touch with our divine human intuition and start, practicing energetic modalities that benefit us?
I think it's about being humble and, again, taking the ego out and being opened. And I've
Yeah.
just seen and witnessed and heard about miraculous type healing, and
Hmm.
not necessarily from traditional means, right? And
Right.
I would even argue that we always talk about like getting to the root cause of
Hmm.
issues, and I would argue that most situations there's an energetic shift first that happens
Hmm.
before we start to see mental, emotional, physical issues. So
Yeah.
if we're really wanting to address root issues, we need to address that spiritual, energetic aspect for people, because the body, besides getting passed down genes, we get passed down karmic expressions, right? That get
Hmm.
carried over from generation to generation. And you may not even know why you have certain feelings about something or other, fears, anxieties, but it could be stemming from great great grandparents.
Right.
And that's an energy, you know, transition.
Hmm.
In passing down a different energy, and then also obviously in your own life, like different energies that you pick up and affect you in different ways. It's like
Hmm.
walking into a room and everyone's laughing, like you instantly just kind of get happy. That's
Yeah.
energy.
Right.
Or you watch something and you get really sad. So I think if you can kind of start to describe it in a way that people can understand, they'll be like,
Right.
oh, okay, yeah, that actually makes sense. It's not so woo woo and crazy and out there.
Right.
There's real substance to it. And then I think it's just taking, like, experiencing it to also really, understand how drastically important and how much change you can get from just doing some energy medicine. Yeah.
Absolutely. And you're so right, because I think where a lot of people might get a little bit weirded out is when we get to kind of woo woo with the terminology of like, oh, we're going to align your chakras and open your third eye and da 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 da. And, I love talking like that just because it's fun. And, people
Mhm.
that get it, they get it. But other
Right.
people look at you like you're a total weirdo. And it's like,
Right.
all right, well, let's back up though and realize all life is really just a bunch of transfer of energy. What is the Krebs cycle and electron
Right.
transport chain? We're just moving hydrogen ions and
Yeah.
changing charges and moving energy around. That's
Yeah.
all it is. And we can absolutely intuitively feel a lot of this stuff. And I think one of the biggest kind of like plagues of modern society is, I think most people seem to be pretty energetically closed off. But as crazy as like social media and the internet and all this stuff is that controls our lives and we're addicted to, at the same time, it's just a tool and we're still in control of how we use it. And so I feel like, holistic health and spirituality, I do feel like there's kind of a growing movement of sort of this awakening. I think the technology, yeah, it's connected all of us, which is speeding everything up. The bad is getting sped up, and the cesspool of all the people that are just awful to each other through the internet. But on the flip side of that, the more in tune, or I don't know, I mean, it's not good, bad, or anything. But anyways, the right people are finding each other faster, and so I think the collective consciousness is cultivating and growing. And I think people are really looking for this kind of stuff. I think we all kind of feel that longing for something that feels a little, it's like that feeling, you get when you're standing at the top of a mountain or on the beach watching a sunset. You're grounded in nature. You are connected to the higher forces of the universe and the people around you. Like, think about holding a loved one's hands, feet in the sands, watching a beautiful sunset on the ocean. You can do this. You're in California. I'm in Kansas. Gosh darn it. Compare the energy of that moment to when, let's say, a 10-year-old child with ADHD is sitting in a classroom with phosphorescent lighting, eating chemically laden, fake processed food. It's compare the energy of those situations,
right.
and tell me that there's not something to it.
So yeah, some good stuff. I know, and that's where I feel like I probably need to get out of my own head and talk about it with more people, because as interested as I am in it and open to trying it, there's lots of people out there that are looking for something like that. I just don't know that that's what it's called, or that's the form that it comes in. But that's the kind of healing that they're looking for. On the surface, they may look like these rock star, look good, dress well, and fit and everything. But they may be holding on to something that's really, truly blocking their potential. And that's what it's all about, right? Is like, how do we get people at such an optimal level and vibrancy in life that they can just live life to the fullest and be whoever they want to be. And that's what.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it's all about. And I think that's what's so cool about our industry is I feel like our industry is kind of the tip of the spear leading that movement where the line in between the woo woo and the out there spirituality, whatever energy, versus hard science, that line is getting blurrier and blurrier. We, like you and I, go to all these different conferences and stuff, and we see the research and the data and the evidence, and when you've got all these former conventional medical doctors turned functional, and now they're lecturing about what modalities they've found helpful for, like, let's say, chronic Lyme, and oh, well, I found that retraining the limbic system is, and stuff like that. And it's like, oh, yeah, there's something to this, So I'm kind of right there with you. It is all a little bit more, I guess it's probably only been the past few years I've been a little bit more accepting of this thing that I feel deep within my soul. But I think we're all kind of like, yeah, society's gotten a little cray. So how do we kind of center ourselves again?
Absolutely. It's so key to healing.
Absolutely. And I think it'll be exciting to see over time, the next 10 years, kind of what that looks like and how that shifts. And, there's tons of research. It always blows my mind because I have my plant children. I love my plant children. It's like a thing. And
yeah,
there's,
so
oh, look at those succulents.
That's my part-time job.
Oh man, look at that's like a full-on logo and everything. Look at you. I just got this, this thing is off gassing as we speak. I can smell the fumes coming off this guy, but it's fine. But like with plants, there's so much evidence that really shows and validates, like, speaking kindly to plants helps them grow. So then, of course, imagine what would happen if you speak kindly to humans. And we all, like, hear this and know this, but people don't, like, think about it or talk about it. And it's like, think about the significance of that. Think about the fact that loving on a plant helps it grow and flourish.
This was literally what I did for my 8th grade science fair project. It's so funny that you brought that up.
Oh, no.
That was science. I think Dr. Emoto, maybe you know him, but he did this whole study on water crystals. And he had people talk, and even some that were just far away, but they would think bad thoughts about the water crystals, like you're ugly, bad, all this stuff. And then another group of people sending love and positive vibes. And he took pictures of the crystals, and the ones that were given the negative energy were just deformed, and the other ones looked like perfect snowflakes. I mean, it was such a cool book and study, because I think the hardest thing with what we're talking about is, how do you study it? How do you measure energy? In a lot of these instances, And it's also going to be different for every single person and environment. So yes, research and studies and all that is 100% needed and helpful to guide different protocols and treatment. But there are some things out there that just can't be researched and studied. And that doesn't mean that it's not true. It just means that we can't tangibly, visualize it, measure it. I think people just need to have an open mind that like, that doesn't mean that it's limited.
Yeah. You're totally right.
Yeah.
Well, it's crazy that you bring that specific example up, because one of my best friends, Brandy, was literally just telling me about that and sent me like a picture of, all the water particles that were like frozen or something. And, the good vibe ones and the bad vibe ones, and like just how it changed the crystals so much. Or I was listening to this podcast. I think it was like an Aubrey Marcus podcast or something. I don't really listen to a lot of podcasts, honestly, but he was talking to some dude who's like a, quantum physicist or something. And they were doing these experiments. I'm going to butcher this, but basically, they have some kind of like particle cannon thingy, and it's blasting particles at some kind of like instrument wall thingy that's measuring it, whatever. But what they found is, in the presence of human observation, so when there were researchers and humans present, like in the lab observing the experiment, the particles behaved differently at the quantum physics level, like these, atomic particles. And I don't know how, I'm not a quantum physicist, but the particle behavior changed with human energy, observational energy there, versus like there's no humans around and we're just blasting particles at a thing. And it's like, talk about a mind screw there of just like, what you mean our very presence changes, atomic particle behavior.
Yeah. All matter has energy that it's constantly giving off. And so all those energies are constantly intertwining and influencing each other. It makes sense, but it is like, it's definitely like mind blown.
Yeah, some next level. So, but then, we can really kind of tie this all back together though, because we really have touched mind, body, soul. That is true healing. And I think that's perhaps because, we've kind of been all over with this conversation, but when we kind of bring it all back together though, we have to use an evidence-based approach to heal your body, your mind, and your psyche, but also your soul, your energy, your frequency. And so everything that we're talking about in this conversation versus obviously our conventional model, if you walk in, you do a super basic like blood chem, everything looks normal, or, it just pill for an ill. Like we all know and recognize what the problem is. And it's like true metabolic healing requires that true, mind, body, soul approach. Yeah.
Which takes longer.
Yeah.
And, in the business model may not necessarily be as successful, but just good and better medicine. Like taking the time to really get to know people on all levels, figuring out, like I always ask people at the end of my visits, what are your top 3 concerns? And that could be like symptoms, that could be like, mental, emotional things they want to work on. And I just keep it really open-ended because, if they feel like they're being heard, first of all, and that they're getting support on the things that are most important to them, that's going to also keep them motivated to stay up and on top of the treatment. So.
Yeah, we really, there's so many things that we could be doing and could be applying our finite energy and resources to. So that is something. It's like, what are, your top 3 goals or objectives? Because there's so many, we have to make sure that we're not pushing our own agenda, and we have to make sure that we're really keeping it client-centered. It's something Precision Nutrition always talks about, like client-centered coaching. We have to make sure it's the client-patient's agenda, and we're the professional that knows the best way to, engage and facilitate that. But it's like, how does the client measure progress? What's your SMART goal? Specific, measurable, attractive, realistic, timely. So you have to because it's just, there's too much. Before you know it, it's like, oh, I got my Reiki session on Thursday and my, soft tissue work and blah, blah, blah. But we have to make sure we don't get overwhelmed, and we're able to break it down into these action steps in a structured, we apply recommendations, we reassess, we course correct, we guide you through the process. A lot to it. And this is, why people need skilled practitioners rather than just relying on doctors. We all wish it was that easy. Like, yeah, just pop a pill and all of your problems go away. Who doesn't? I wish it was that easy. I do. That would make my life a lot easier, but fortunately that's not working very well for our nation.
We're more complex and beautiful than that. So
Yeah. So I want to make sure I don't keep you all day. Oh, 111. I love repeating numbers on the clock. I don't want to keep you all day, but really the only pillar that we haven't touched on is functional fitness. We've talked about spirituality, psychology, functional medicine, not so much functional fitness, but I'm curious, especially, as a doctor of naturopathic medicine that works day in, day out, helping heal patients and helping patients reclaim optimal health. I'd love to just throw this at you and hear your take on how society tends to kind of confuse fitness as metabolic health.
That's a good question.
Like, I want to get healthier, I'm going to go hire a personal trainer. Is fitness metabolic health?
Yeah. No, that's a really good question. I didn't think you were going there, but I like it. Okay,
Curveball.
I'll run with it.
Yeah.
First of all, I'll say that like movement and exercise is drastically, hugely important to support metabolism and metabolic health, but it is not the only thing. Calories in, calories out is so outdated. To think that that's going to change, your physiology it may help it, but it's not. It's a very small piece of the puzzle. So I think it's important. I think that the type of exercise that you're doing is critical too. Balance for me is always really important. The mix of HIIT, high intensity interval training, with more like long, low impact, but like long period of time. So like cardio, low and slow, stretching, yoga, all that kind of stuff. It's really like anything else. It's a variety, it's balance. That's really important. But that being said, I still have patients that do all those things, eat a perfect clean diet, and still come to me and say, I cannot lose this weight. I still have issues with my thyroid, etc. So what we have to understand is that when we're talking about metabolism and metabolic health, so much of it is coming from the gut, from the brain. Hormones are huge when we're talking about metabolic health. And so that's where I see a lot of patients that finally come see me because they're getting frustrated with just eating a clean diet and working out and not seeing any changes. Then we may go deeper and look at what's your thyroid doing? What are your leptin levels like? Leptin is a hormone that is released from adipose or fat tissues and tells the brain, hey, I'm satisfied. I don't need any more food. Well, some people have a leptin resistance, which is kind of like insulin resistance. So they make the leptin, and they actually probably make more than they should because they have more fat tissue, but your brain stops listening to it. And so you never have that shut off mechanism. You never have that, oh, I'm satisfied feeling. And so we look at things like that. We look at things like thyroid and your sex hormones, adrenals, cortisol levels. And those are a lot of times a missing piece that no one has addressed to get metabolism back on track. And sometimes it's also like timing of when you work out. We had talked about, I think at the conference that we were at, they talked about the 7 to 10 minute, I think 7 minutes was researched. That's all you need. Maybe this wasn't at this conference. It was maybe in a different one, but 7 minutes was researched that is all you need as like a HIIT workout to increase metabolism and get metabolic pathways working. So people are doing these like 45-hour minute CrossFit or whatever workouts every single day. Well, guess what? That can be a stressor on the body just as much as, stress from an infection or whatnot. So I think it's really about, again, always looking at the whole person and figuring out what your body needs for that moment. Because CrossFit can be great for some people, but not for everyone. Some people may need more cardio. Some people may need more stretching. You may just need that wake up in the morning, 7-10 minutes of HIIT workout, and that's good for metabolism. For cardiovascular health, it's different. So I think it's always looking at how it directly impacts different aspects of health. So hopefully that answered your question.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it's just one of those, because I started out with, that was my background. It was fitness
Yeah.
and nutrition. Um, and I think, there's so many ways I could run with this, but ultimately we have to remember, like, exercise, it is a stress on the body to whatever degree. Obviously going for a walk in nature is probably going to be more parasympathetic, provoking, and blood flow, lymphatic flow, lower cortisol, because you're getting your Shinrin Yoku going and forest bathing and all of that, versus CrossFit, which I am a CrossFit coach. I don't use it anymore, but hey, it's another feather in the cap or whatever. But I love CrossFit. Ultimately, though, I think people need to understand that pursuing a fitness goal versus pursuing a metabolic health goal
Yeah.
are not always going to go hand in hand. So, with the majority of my clients, we're working through like a GI infection protocol, or we're trying to detox mold toxins and crap, whatever it is. Like, we literally, like, recovery is the priority, not beating up your body with a workout. But I think, and we could tug that string all day, but something I feel really strongly about, and this kind of speaks even to like my own journey through life and health and all of that, as I've matured and awakened a little bit on my path, is learning the language of unconditional love, which my friend Christy Marsh described unconditional love as the fifth dimension, which I never heard that like terminology before, but I really dug that, because I think when you start kind of studying conditional love versus unconditional, and you start practicing, and notice I say practicing, it's not like you read about it once and then boom, the uh, fairy tales all come true or whatever. Like, it's a practice, just like anything else. You have to practice it day in and day out. And ultimately, unconditional love, for yourself and others, like, it is the only way. Like, it seems to be the only way. And how this relates to fitness, it's like, where is he going with this? But I see so many people, especially like, I've done 5 bodybuilding shows, and I have a lot of competitor friends and stuff, and I have very strong opinions on show prep and how to do it from a holistic savage nature. Because I think just a lot of people, they're unhappy and they're unhealthy, and their immediate thought is turn to fitness, because we all get bombarded with fitspos or whatever the word is. I still don't know what that word means or where it came from, on social media, and like, look at my abs and all this kind of junk, and it's so hollow underneath that. It's these, I don't want to get savage and say shells of humans, but people tend to, they're unhappy, they're unhealthy, they don't like themselves. It's a lot of self-loathing, and that motivates them to go kick their own ass in the gym and pursue a physique or fitness goal to fill the void in their soul. And I think we have to start exercising out of self-love, not self-hate, is probably the most concise way I could put it. Because when you start practicing unconditional self-love, what's that look like? So let's give an example. Oh, I've been working a 12-hour shift, and I just got off work. I'm exhausted, but I still got to go do my hard leg day, because otherwise, I'll never reach my fitness goals and have the physique of my dreams, and da 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 da. And it's kind of this like, oh, no rest days, and like, you got to want it more, and da da da. And it's I don't think the problem with our society is we don't like work hard enough. I mean, definitely, I think some people, um, but I think self love is going to be, you know what, my body, that's not what it needs right now. What it needs is like a nature walk, a hot Epsom bath, some organic salad, a grass fed steak, and I'm going to chill the F out tonight. Not, well, I have to get in my metabolic conditioning and then food prep, and you know what
Oh
I
yeah.
could go on and on.
I mean, that's probably such a big thing that we talk about with a lot of our patients is they come in like, oh yeah, I exercise all the time, a lot, and I tell them, okay, well, I actually want you to go from working out 7 days a week to 4 maybe, but
Yeah.
I also want one of those days to be yoga. or a walk. And they're like,
Totally.
yeah, I mean, like I have three heads, but I think you're right. I mean, so much of it is why are you doing the things that you're doing in any
Hmm.
aspect? I
Yeah.
actually, interestingly enough, I went to an event last night and Steve Weatherford was speaking, who was the
Mm.
kicker of the New York Giants.
Hmm.
Such a cool guy. And he does a lot of podcasts and works with different business coaching and all that kind of stuff. And he was like, yeah, like I have this amazing physique, but once I started realizing like why I had it and underneath I had all these insecurities, like just because
Mm.
someone looks great doesn't necessarily mean they have no insecurities.
Right.
So I think it is really important to go back to like, why are you doing the things that you're doing? And do they really feed your soul? And I
Yeah.
think that's a really good question you can ask. Like, am I doing this for me or am I
Hmm.
doing it because of the opinions of others? I'm trying
Hmm.
to live up to the opinions of others. Well, guess what? That takes so much energy. And there you go. You're
Totally.
draining your energy and you're taking that energy away from healing.
Yeah.
So if healing is your goal on whatever level that you're working on, then make sure that the actions that you're doing, the people you're around, the things that you're eating all help to enhance that,
Hmm.
not drive energy away from
Hmm.
that. And just to kind of bring it full circle back to fertility, this is actually a really big issue that I'll see with people. A lot of women overexercise
Totally.
and men too. But that may be a huge reason for their anovulation. So their ability their loss of ovulation,
Hmm.
which obviously you need to ovulate in order to get pregnant. And so when you don't have enough body fat, you'll
Hmm.
hear a lot like pro athletes and women that are collegiate athletes or work out a lot or on these sports teams. Oftentimes, and I'm sure a lot of women have experienced this, they stop getting their period.
Hmm.
And most of the time they're also not ovulating. And so it's about like figuring out a balance. We need a certain amount of body fat in order to be able to support growing a baby. Um, and then the flip side of that is there are women that are trying to get pregnant that may have a little extra weight, and that's also not conducive for supplying good nutrients to the baby. So it's either, how do we maintain weight, lose weight, or help you gain weight, as well as looking at fitness as a way to just enhance and support the body and not drive without
Hmm.
the rest.
Hmm.
Because then we start to see the adrenals getting fatigued, we see burnout, we see issues with being able to perform the same way, injuries. So yeah, I mean, I think that it's really important to look at exercise as a healthy tool to continue healing and not just to, get the best physique ever.
Right. Right. Absolutely. And yeah. Whew. Well, you said something really important there. One of my like life mantras or kind of rules that I like to live by is really thinking about if it doesn't nourish your mind, body, or soul, forget it, stop it, skip it. And I think that's still like the cover image on my Facebook or something. But um, I really do try to encourage people. Like we make thousands of choices every single day, thousands of choices. And, not that it's realistic to every single choice. Like, Brendan, does this nourish your mind, body, or soul? And then you kind of have to think about it. And then you kind of have to, because, it might nourish your mind, but not your body. It might nourish your soul, but not your mind. And you
Right.
kind of have to, it's a balancing act. But the point is being self-aware and practicing that self-love
Right.
of, okay, what is the best thing I could do for myself right now? And it's not always what you want to do. There's the desires of the ego versus the needs of the divine soul, and those are not always the same thing. So I think if we kind of stop and ask ourselves like, I've got CrossFit on the schedule tonight. Is that really the best thing that I could do for myself? And if it is, then do it. But if
Yeah.
it's not,
Yep.
think about it.
Yeah. Something
Yeah.
that was really cool that Steve was talking about last night was two different things. One, he said, live your life by design, which I really loved because it was like we live in this society where it's like follow this certain path and what life looks like and where you're supposed to be at certain points in your life. And it's like, but why? Like
Hmm.
doing that to appease other people and to like fit in versus kind of figuring out like what the perfect day or week or year looks like to you, which I think will really help on healing when we talk about healing because it helps to support your soul and bring you joy when you live life the way you want, not the way how others live.
Right.
And the other thing he said was the differences between professionals and amateurs. We were talking about, okay, like when you set up your schedule, like you're saying, okay, I'm going to CrossFit these days, and you get to that point and you're like, oh man, I'm so drained, but I'm doing it. Like, I'm going to get into the gym. One of the things he said was the difference between an amateur and a professional is that amateurs make decisions based on feelings, and professionals make decisions because they have already set it in place and have it in their life design. And I do love that. I think it's really helpful, especially because I tend to live more on the like, I don't really feel like getting up to go to the gym. I'm just gonna so it helps me be a little bit more structured. But at the same time, I do think it's about balance. Like, I think it's really good to still check in and figure out like where you're how you're feeling, what's best for your soul, and try to tease out like, is this just ego feeling or is this like how my soul is feeling? I love that you said that. So I don't know. I think it's about balance, but I do think that we can be as healthy as possible when we really help support ourselves, like on a soul level, heart level, mind, body level. That's where the true healing happens.
Boom. You know, I feel like that's the note to end on right there, was because you just, you know, we could easily talk all day, but that just beautifully tied it all together. I mean, we covered so much ground of, you know, fertility and hard science and spirituality, psychology, self-ownership of taking ownership of your own health, communication, ego, like, whew, what a rich episode, huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Goodness. So where can people learn more about you? We have all of your info and we'll be sure to blast it all over cyberspace when we post the episode, but.
Cool. Yeah. So my website, everything's pretty simple. It's just wildcraftmedicine.com. My Instagram is also Wildcraft Medicine, and I have a Facebook page, Wildcraft Medicine. So I do post a lot about different events I have. If you're local in La Jolla, San Diego area, please come join whenever. I try to do a lot of community events to reach out and support community, give education, empower. That's some of our pillars as well. So that's where we post most of those things.
Very good. You know, I'll be in San Diego November. I want to come see your clinic.
Awesome. Absolutely.
That'd be super tight. We can hang out, get tacos or something.
Oh, we'll definitely get tacos.
I hope, you know, I'm sure, I mean, our paths will cross at least one more time by the end of the year. I'm sure we'll be in Santa Cruz, I think in like September or something like that. But hopefully we're at another conference together sometime.
Yeah. Yeah. That would be
Hashtag
awesome.
Marcons, right?
Yep. Good times learning about chronic illness and heavy stuff. But
I love it. Yeah. We're so fortunate. Like I cannot imagine like a better line of work than what we get to do. Like, you know, can it be hard and complex and overwhelming and draining sometimes? Absolutely. But my God, like I couldn't be more passionate about this stuff. It's so cool.
It's pretty satisfying to do something that you're so passionate about and helping other people. It's a pretty awesome feeling.
Totally. Well, Emily, it's been such an honor having you on the podcast. You're such a wealth of knowledge and such a dope soul that I was just like, I can't wait to, you know, share your light and love with the world. So thank you so much for being on the show with me.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get this. I'll let you know when the episode drops. We'll blast it out there. But a lot of good education that I think a lot of people really benefit from. So thank you for contributing to the mission of, you know, saving the world from chronic disease. We'll do it together. Awesome. Have a beautiful rest of your day, my friend.
You too.
All right. We'll see ya.